Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever it is you are in the world. And we appreciate you joining us from wherever it is you're joining us from. Excited to bring another great session for you on licensing, our fourth one in the series. If you're joining us for the first time, the good news is we'll loop you into the others so you can go back and catch up on what you missed. And we've got some documentation, some companion documents for the Q&A that's going on in the chat and summaries of all the things we've talked about. So really great sessions and really happy to be here again with you and with this panel. I'm going to go ahead and share, unless somebody else is taking the reins on sharing the document, I'll share it today and I can drive. And then we'll kick it off to the team. Let me just get this up and running from the beginning, and I'm going to click share, and here we go. Hopefully everybody can see that screen.
Yep.
Great. Again, welcome. Today's session we've titled Do's and Don'ts. So the team got together, and after everything we've gone through, kind of the 101 and kind of developed into this nice cadence, we felt like this was a time to kind of go over do's and don'ts. We'll be talking about what's new, so what's changed since the last time we met with you, and also more on the fact that things have gone live. The banners have started to show up for folks. So what's happening out there, based on that. So I'm going to kick it over to the next slide. And just again, introduce the team here. We got a great team. You can read them all here, all great folks. I'm sure they'd love to connect with you if you haven't already on LinkedIn to stay in touch that way. All of them experts in this particular area and happy to be here sharing their knowledge. Again, this is our agenda for today. What's changed, the banner, do's and don'ts, automating license management, and then a little bit about an upcoming panel to do this live. So bringing it all together in just a couple of months here at DynamicsCon. So I'm going to kick it over to, who's taking this? Alex, are you taking this or?
Yeah, I can start, and then
Great.
Ian or Andre, whoever would like to jump in, can absolutely do it as well.
Perfect.
So the biggest things, what has changed, I guess, first and foremost, I didn't actually make it a bullet point here, but things have started to slow down, which is good from a change perspective. And I think Ian and the Microsoft team will give feedback on that and be happy about that as well. So we have a shorter list of changes, right, from our last meetup. Biggest thing is that, obviously we have had some customers that have started seeing in-app notifications, right? Those are now active. As far as January 15th was the start date for, that renewal roadmap or the validation roadmap that we talked about previously. And there were a lot of known issues that got resolved right around the Christmas time, as far as different issues, and those are still ongoing. I think some of those, some of the bigger ones, there were some menu items that were supposed to be entitled but didn't have any license that actually entitled them. There was some activation issues if you had multiple agreements with Microsoft as far as what date, actually was your renewal date for there. Andre's great advent calendar ended. So he, if you haven't seen that and need some really good content around licensing, he did an advent calendar all around different things from a license perspective. So absolutely go out and check out his blog there. There are some issues where clients thought they should start to see banners and they're not yet, and those are still being worked through in that case, right, where they thought they were in the pipeline as far as their renewal and should start seeing those banners, but they haven't seen those yet. So that was definitely something that's being looked at. And then a holdover from last time that I just want to bring up again was the Dataverse storage changes, right? So obviously we've talked a lot about the security side of the licensing changes here, but there also is a storage component to that. And Microsoft, right before actually Convergence Conference last December, put out an update to simplify that. And so if you haven't seen our last talks about what that kind of looks like, absolutely go out and be sure to check those out as well. So I don't know if anybody in the team wants to add anything else that's changed since the last time we chatted, but those were the ones that this team came up with.
There's at least a bit of shout out for me too. Ian, you also want to say something, but just during his vacation time off, just he also chatted sometimes with me and said, hey, just things got also released, and I was just checking some of the issues, which was greatly resolved. So that's good. And also just for the license, the advent calendar, I thought, well, I'm not really ready. Let's continue after the Christmas. But for 2026, I thought, well, let's stop and not create a tier off calendar. That would be a bit too much here. But I think also Ian wants to say something about the activation dates.
Yep, and what I would say on activation dates is two things. One, customers are getting in-app notifications. So there's a key thing that for customers that are on annual agreements. So that might mean that they thought, hey, I had an annual agreement that ended on December 31st. Why am I not, getting in-app banners on January 15th? Because it's tied to the renewal date. That would mean that would be December 31st of 2026. Again, 11 months from now, those customers will see banners that would be there. The second thing that I really want to kind of highlight is that customers that are seeing app banners, there's two things that I would point out. One is assigning the license in M365 Admin Center is the way to go through and get that banner to go through and be removed within about an hour for customers to go through and see that being removed. And secondly, then continue to open up support cases. We've had a couple of customers that have been flooding their support help desk call centers when they go through and see the banners. And you can imagine that 100 users or multiple dozens of users are seeing a banner, and they open cases with their support desk and say, hey, it says assign me a license. And then when they do assign those, it can go through and take just a longer period of time. I think you'll talk about that as well, Andre, in terms of your automation. That if you're trying to assign hundreds of users in bulk rapidly, it can take on the order of several hours that would be there. Or again, you can go through and leverage existing automations that would be there to remove those banners. But those banners are active, and they do go through and are tied to customers' agreement dates. The one thing that customers can go through and be surprised by is that their user licenses that are on month-to-month cloud solution provider agreements may go through and bring them forward. So if they have, team member licenses that are month-to-month, or finance licenses or supply chain licenses month-to-month, that would go through and then bring in the date earlier than maybe expected. But for the majority, again, if you have the majority of your licenses on an agreement, it's the largest license count that's driving your validation date in the system. So that would be there, what I would share with folks on this call. But then again, if you're seeing issues, I'll put a known issue as well in the PPAC that we've documented and shared. But again, if you're hearing things or seeing things from banners, or not yet seeing banners and you're expecting banners, again, we can go through and open up a case with Microsoft, or B, you'll see over the course of this year as things happen from those banners being the key thing that would go through and drive you to then say what you're going to see for those users. And again, we're seeing customers assigning licenses, and that's actually then effectively enabling them to have banners be removed and then access being continued there. Back over to you, Andre.
Thank you. Maybe we can jump to the next slide. Yes, actually, the banners has arrived, and the learning here, there are some learnings out of here as well. If you look at the first banner, this was appearing in December 16 or 17 at just one of my clients, where it's stated like, hey, it will be effective as of November 1. Well, actually, in that case, you need to update to the latest quality updates for the correct banner, as it's a label which is changed in the metadata. And also just the T-30 is latest. The experience is that one client actually just have their renewal today. But that's they will just wait for the grace period now and see if they will be in time for assigning all the licenses. But they experienced that they got their in-app notifications already earlier than the 30 days. And that's because Microsoft is activating the tenants monthly, I thought on 15th of each month.
That's correct, Andre. Yep.
Right. Yep. But when you see these banners, just don't need to say it again. Start license assignments ASAP to prevent being locked out of the application. And also just an experience, one of my clients themselves had expected the banners, but they have not seen any yet. And also that has been verified. How is that possible? Actually, they had a yearly agreement until May last year. And then just about uncertainty of is everything still continuing with the license enforcement or what to do, they went over from a yearly to a monthly subscription. But as they renewed their licenses, they were in the grace period from last year that they were extended for 12 months. So most likely they will be only activated again in May. So that might be one explanation. But
that is explanation on that one. Yes. Yep. Yeah,
correct.
It's May.
But as mentioned,
this year.
Yeah, if you experience it and don't have any explanation, just open a support ticket for Microsoft to see what is going on. Now, I think we can move to the next slide, or maybe someone has something in addition. And who would like to take this one today?
I can do it, Andre.
Yep, great.
So some do's and don'ts that we wanted to lay out in this case, right? As Andre kind of mentioned already, the sooner you start your license assessment as far as making sure you're ready, your compliance journey, right, from a license side, the better. I don't think there's been any client that said I started my license assessment too early, right? And why did I do that? From trying to become compliant. So that would be a huge recommendation, I think, from at least me personally. Make sure that you are updating as you possibly can to the latest versions, right? To make sure that you're getting the latest and greatest from Microsoft. So I know that that's not feasible for every company, but as you're available or as you're able to do that, make sure you're updating your FNO or D365 instance, right, to get all the new bug fixes. And then, as was mentioned earlier by Ian, right, providing feedback is a huge way to let Microsoft know, hey, this is working, this isn't working. What are things that could be improved in that case. So really allows for keeping that channel open to Microsoft to provide that. Some don'ts on the right hand side here was obviously waiting until the last moment. The longer you wait, especially if you're already in the license validation timeline, right, that 45-day window, especially be sure to don't wait until the last moment. Like Ian said, overwhelming your IT team is not a great way to do this. And there is a delay, right, if you're mass assigning licenses to users as far as the M365 side. So make sure you're not waiting. And then one of the big things I've been advocating for is, internally at your organizations, make sure you're developing a plan for the ongoing license assessment, right? As you are what is the process when you're assigning a role to a user to do your license validation, right? As you're making changes to your security at a role due to your privilege level, right? What are the steps you're taking to ensure that you're not modifying the license and having impact to your users? And there are some tools. Andre has a great one that he'll talk about here in just a second to help with that, right? As part of that process. But, I think there still needs to be above and beyond that internally within your organizations, right? There has to be a step in that process for each of those now to do a license assessment from that perspective, right? So definitely, what does that plan look like? Who's assigning it, or who's actually, assigning the roles or changing the roles? Are they actually doing a license assessment along the way, along with that? And if they're not, right, how are you, what mechanism do you have in place that actually ensure that you're not going to impact your users on a day-to-day basis? So those are some of the high-level do's and don'ts. I don't know and if anybody would like to add any to the screen.
If you could go to the next slide, I add a couple of them. One is actually in line with what you just said, Alex. The procurement time. Oh, yeah, the first one. First one is just what you said. We should start, ASAP, just to make sure we count all the time that it takes. But also the procurement time, and especially if you have to negotiate with Microsoft, The Microsoft year end is June 30th. So if you have a deadline before, if you negotiate your licenses before that, you always get a better deal from Microsoft. And we have seen a lot of users where they that financial year end, it actually has an effect on what they get from Microsoft, especially if you have under an EA and you want to combine multiple licenses. When you're going with D365 licenses as well as everything else you got, M365. Azure spending and all that, it would be great to go through procurement, put all that together, come up with a proposal to Microsoft. So that's definitely, the sooner you start, the more time you get to identify savings, negotiate with Microsoft and then account for it all that time. One thing that we identified also is that you don't have to strictly think about, reducing licenses just to reduce the cost, because there are trade-offs. So when you have less licenses, that means you're going to have less database capacity, not only on D365, but also on Dataverse. So yeah, it's good. It's great to get less user counts on your licensing, because obviously you pay less. But then if you're already over, and we've seen this with many users, they are 200%, 300% over on their Dataverse capacity or Dynamics 365 capacity. Now you're actually, the users who are trying to push down on those licenses, they're shooting themselves in the foot, because then they have to buy that 40 gig per month for Dataverse capacity. So just be mindful of all the impact that it makes when you are reducing your license count, and try to make that trade-off to be more balanced.
Yeah, and the sooner you start, you can also take some more opportunities. At least for one client I'm working on today, I just started a few weeks ago. They will now first review their segregation of duty rules. Is it really complete? They did not check the segregation of duties list for newly added customizations, so they could also just benefit from just making that one complete, then redefine the security roles. And this is an example where they have almost 600 users and more than 500 active security roles. So that is complexity, and a lot of security roles today have wrong licenses. For example, read-only role requires 2 base licenses, and just one of the root causes for that was also just a read-only role, but posting permissions on sales orders, which is not read-only. But also just increasing the license. They are also just not 200, but they are 500% over their database entitlement capacity, meaning they're 5 terabyte over, which is a huge cost if they don't do anything. So if we just made a calculation, we think we can bring them down back to their original acquired licenses, what they have today. So most likely they are compliant in just the value of the licenses, but what we will do is now just reconfigure all the security roles to meet the current licenses, and also just check for the database consumption. Whereas I've seen that per environment they have, it's already about 1 terabyte of data in the database logs, which just obviously should be cleaned up. There should be a review process on your database log periodically. So I think we can bring them back, but that's the opportunity you have when you start today instead of just 2 days before you will receive the notification banners.
Yeah, and I do want to add one other I put in the chat. We've seen this from a number of customers in the last week, where they have, let's call it, all company security group being added. So they have 11,000 users, but they have only purchased 100 licenses or 800 licenses, and they have 1,000 users. Pick your number. And we continue to go through and see guidance that we put in to say, disable your inactive users. You may not have offboarded users previously in D365 F&O, and so then you're seeing inflated counts. And so there are multiple ways to go through and make sure you have your hygiene on active users in your company, or employees that are at their company are in the system. If they're no longer with the company, but there's still records in F&O and they haven't been disabled, you'll find that there are users that have left the organization, left the team, left the the role, and they're still active in the system that are, quote, showing up as a required license. Go through and look at that activity, user activity aging report, to go through and then be able to validate when's the last time the user logged in? Can they be disabled? And then, or can those entry ID groups entry IDs that are no longer with the company be removed from F&O for cleanup? That helps the license counts, this helps the hygiene, and it just helps you go through and then say, hey, we actually do have 500, 50 users in the company, and we have 20 licenses. We're not finding that there's been 100 users in the company that have left the company over the course of 10 years that are still in the system, showing that we need a count of 100 licenses. So that cleanup and that hygiene on making sure that inactive users are deemed inactive helps you and helps go through and then right size both the reporting as well as then the complexity of security roles. We've seen a number of customers that have had all of the users in a security role be inactive. So does that security role be needed if no one is in that role and hasn't accessed that role in a number of years? That can go through and help along with the cleanup of reducing complexity on maintenance of inactive or unused security roles and duties and privileges there.
Yeah, then it's up for a really exciting topic for today. Just the past months, I was just working on a Power Automate flow for automatic assignment of licenses if they are available in your tenant. I wrote several blog posts, also an installation configuration guide, how it's working, and a demo YouTube video as well, how it's working. But there are currently 3 flows being able to take care of automatic license assignment, and it's currently not revoking, just removing licenses, but that's something I will also work on in the future. And why did I do it? It's just when you create users in your Entra ID, new users will be onboarded, then it's not always really clear what security roles will be assigned at user creation. And just today in a workshop, they explained to me, well, they onboard a new user or just have a replacement for an old colleague, then they will just redefine that and recheck, like, hey, what is this person really needing today? Then they assign the licenses, and as part of the license, they will divide the security roles. As part of the security roles, it determines the license. So when then going back for manual assignments is also a cumbersome process. Then I thought, well, what can we do? Create some logic in a Power Automate flow, which tries to simulate all the logic being built by the Microsoft license enforcement team to see is a base license requirement for finance, commerce, or supply chain management. If not, do we need a base license for HR or project operations, or is it an operations activity, team members, or even a human resources self-service user? And in case of a base license, in case there are multiple licenses required, then it will also try to find available attached licenses. So it can save a lot of time compared to manual assignments. And I will share my screen for a moment to show the solution. Let me know if you can see the screen.
Yes.
Right. So you can find the download and installation guide on my website. If it's installed correctly, then you have 3 Power Automate flows. One is the base, which is having all of the logic, which can run standalone, but is also used as a child flow for the other flows. If you want to run it standalone, it can be run just providing a user ID. If you look for the Benjamin user, Benjamin is requiring a supply chain license. Whereas if we look at the licenses themselves, just quickly showing, this is one tenant where we have licenses available, but hardly any licenses were assigned to users. So the majority is still available and should be assigned. If we then try to find Benjamin. Benjamin has some licenses, but no Dynamics 365 licenses yet. Let's check what's happening here. So it's scrolling now. So you can see he has Microsoft 365, Power Automate Flow, and Teams, but no Dynamics licenses. And according to the license user summary, but also the report to Power Platform Admin Center, Benjamin needs a supply chain management license. We can run this one for the user Benjamin. And the flow is running about 20 till 25 seconds for each run. And while doing some automation, if it's being used as a child flow, it's possible to run multiple flows in parallel. That will also speed up the process. And in my environment, I was able to run it for about 120 users in 3 minutes time, assigning the available licenses. So it's checking what licenses are available just according to what was seen on the license page just a minute ago. It will check what user, for this user, what licenses are required for his currently assigned roles. Then it will check, is there a match? Can I assign the license to this user? And while it's running, I think Power Automate Flow is a bit lagging here, but when refreshing the screen, no, it's probably still running. There might be something. Always fun live demos.
While that's running, Andre, do you want to speak
Yes.
to the security role to run this tool, both M6 and in PPAC? I believe it's global admin that you need, as well as potentially you need D365 admin.
Yes, you need some admin license indeed. It's checking certain things here, and I think it's just now it's working with the license. Not sure what's going on, but it's.
You can probably do it without global admin as long as you have a license admin and a D365 admin and probably system administrator in Dataverse.
Yeah, at least for accessing the license information, then in the background, Microsoft Graph application is created as a service principal, and that one is used, which will have access to be able to assign the licenses on behalf of the organization. Well, and for running the flow, you will need at least rights to read the user and the security rules in finance and operations. I think there's something going on my tenant. Correct. There's a timeout. That's something I will need to check. So apologies for that. Then just a second demo will probably also not work either. But when you run the flow itself for all of the users, this one will start pretty quickly. But then for the base role, but most likely this will all fail now. It will start multiple flows in parallel. And if you click on Edit Columns, if it's not visible yet, there's an option to also enable input parameters. So then you can also see which flow is running for which user. And after the flow is ready, at least a working demo is available on YouTube. You can find the video also via my blog post. But when everything is really ready, it will also send an email with the actions it had done. The admin was skipped because it's an administrator, but when available, it will also just check. In this case, Benjamin already had the license assigned. Arnie had a requirement for a license, did not have one, and is one assigned. And in this way, you can read through the whole email, and maybe some of them need manual actions if you don't have licenses available, or maybe if a wrong base license was assigned, like human resource assigned, where also finance is required, then it also requests you to do some manual interactions.
This is great stuff, Andre. As a customer, and being responsible for doing this, at the moment, I'm currently in my grace period because our deadline doesn't come up until November, and at the moment, I probably will not be running this until we get closer to our deadline, and because we have a number of people who are showing up in PPAC as either under licensed or over licensed, and we're using that information with the under licensed to be the signal that we got to go back and redesign some of our security roles and remove the expectation that people do certain things in their business process to reduce the need for that license. And I would be concerned if I turned this on too soon that it would start going and assigning licenses, and I would lose the visibility to all these people that I'm trying to work on to reduce the business process. So I would recommend to customers to try this out, maybe in your UAT environment, and see what works for you. But be careful of too broad of a brush with just assigning a whole bunch of licenses. You might lose the visibility that you need to do the other parts of your right sizing.
That's fully correct. Thanks for mentioning that. Indeed, if you just have not a correct set of security rules and not correct license requirements in your tenant yet, then indeed running it too soon will just consume licenses where they most likely should not be assigned when you have redesigned all of them. But yeah, indeed, if you like the solution, just do some tests with a minor number of users. Then you can see if the tool is working for you. Some cases where you can say just quickly, like Benjamin, clearly only needs a supply chain license. That can be assigned. Maybe you can test with an activity or team member and multiple licenses, see what happens. If you're confident and are ready, then we just try to tell everyone, start with just your license optimization as soon as possible for the license assignment to be ready. But this is a flow you would only like to enable just when you are ready. Correct. I think it could be a huge time saver. And in between, if you would like to try it out and see certain things, I love to take feedback into consideration. At least what I'm intending to do is adding support for intra-ID groups, which is not there. Just like Microsoft, they also first did it for all users with direct role assigns, and later added the intra-ID group support. That's something I'm considering, and I'm also working on an idea to see if we want to automatically remove licenses if they are not required. But that's also dangerous, as some users might have a higher license intentionally.
Yeah, so the other scenario that we will eventually have to deal with, both in your automation and with Microsoft's PPAC reports, is the PPAC reports will give you all the information about finance and operations, but it doesn't take Dataverse only licenses into account. So, for example, if you have a Dynamics 365 sales user using CRM or one of the other sales tools, you will it doesn't take any of that into account. And then we have examples where we have a supply chain license with a sales attach, and the user is primarily just going to be using sales, but we had a sales attach. So so we went that route with assigning the license, but it shows up in PPAC as over licensed because they don't have a security role that needs supply chain. And so we'll have to work out longer term how we're going to handle that, because if we turned on remove licenses they don't need, they would get their base license and their attach removed. So just know that to everybody else who's on the call, just know that there's a lot of progress on the F&O supply chain finance front, but the interactions with some of the other Dataverse only licenses is still leaves a few things to be desired.
And Tom, this is Ian from Microsoft. I would just mentioned I didn't pay you to go through and give a view of our roadmap, but you just spoken to the roadmap for our teams to go through and deliver over the course of 2026. So I would just say we appreciate the cross-portfolio application licensing. So more to come there in the months ahead.
That's great.
But thank you for giving us a preview, the trailer to what needs to be delivered. And again, keep the feedback coming.
Great. Let's see what, yeah. I think, Tad, you probably have a good insight on this. We're just finishing up the final stage of session selection for DynamicsCon. And
yes, we received 233 wonderful submissions for to fit 65 available slots for finance and operations, supply chain, etc. We're going through all of those right now, and we are going to have some panel discussions. Licensing is definitely on the agenda, so keep an eye out for that when we publish the agenda for DynamicsCon in May, and we hope to have more information between now and then, and some great conversation when we get a little closer. And if you are a customer who is experiencing this transition to enforcement in the first quarter, we'd love to hear from you about maybe contributing your experience to the rest of the people who are going to be having that experience throughout the remainder of the year.
Awesome. Yeah, I think obviously our goal here is to, advance the customer support on this topic and always. And so that's what we're here to do at Doug, is to provide the best possible end user education experience. So, it's always exciting to have folks like this group getting together to keep, an important topic, moving forward and generating, great results for those, joining us. So I think that's all we had for today. Any other questions we didn't get to? Anything else you want to drop knowledge on before we wrap up?
Well, there is a question in here to me. Have you found a blog or follow a good process for figuring out what a user actually needs? I have warehouse production users that have sub roles out of the box, so I really need to customize those, but I haven't found a good way to do that where I can actually figure out what duties and privilege they really need. Thanks for any tips. Okay, so you want a good process, or you just want a process? Some of the processes with capturing the process of the user, some of those work. The scale. I think the answer to your question is really a question of scale. If you are a small customer with 100 users, you're going to handle this problem completely differently than if you're a customer who has to deal with thousands of users. And you're going to have to figure out a process that works for you. I will say that my size right now is that we're right in the middle of that. We've got about 500 users. And the process that we're using is we send out a notification that we are going to be taking away privileges and ask for feedback when somebody gets stuck. That gets raised through our steering committee, and somebody says, I can't do the thing that I used to be able to do, and IT's on call to jump in and review that. And I would say about 80% of the time we can guide people to an alternate business process instead of having to re-add the permissions back to the role. And most of what it is basically, like you were saying, warehouse personnel. And we came up with a strategy and said our goal is to make sure that warehouse personnel, receiving technicians, shipping technicians, quality inspection technicians, things like that. Our goal is to make sure they can operate with an operations activity license. And then we go through the roles that they're assigned. We strip out the privileges. Well, we either remove an entire role from those people, or we strip out the privileges that elevate that role beyond an operations activity license. And then when they come and complain and say, I can't do the thing I need to do, then we start asking the business questions. Why are you doing that? Should somebody else be doing that for you? Can that be automated? Is that a value-added exercise? And then, like I said, 80% of the time we find out that they didn't actually need to be doing that at all anyway. And so we have to burn our candle at both ends. Sometimes we're adjusting licensing, sometimes we're adjusting security roles, and sometimes we're adjusting business processes and trying to bring it all together.
Yeah. Tom, to add on to that, I think this is a question that I'm getting asked more and more as well, right? And there's a process way or your more manual way that you can go about this, right? That we've been doing in the past, where you would sit down with the end users, do task recordings and things like that, and be able to actually see what objects the user's using in their day-to-day operations. Obviously, that's a very manual process, and can take quite a while. The other way that you can do this now is you can start to get closer with the out-of-the-box telemetry, right? Where if you want to enable that, you can actually see the forms that users are going to. It doesn't include every object in the system. It's focused on menu item displays, right? But you can get closer to seeing, hey, if I track page views, I can go and see what pages the user's going to. We can tie that off to, their access and be able to see what are they actually using or consuming. It doesn't answer some of the harder questions of like, do they actually need that access, right? Or, some of those like business related questions. So it's definitely still something that needs to be taken into account, but it gets closer. And then if you want to go the further step, right, you can start looking at things like custom telemetry to get access to the usage of other objects, right? Menu outputs and actions and data entities and things like that. So there's kind of different layers of how far you want to take that and go to that. So, and then there's obviously tools, the ISVs right on top of that, if you want a more automated solution that, help bundle that up from that perspective. So that's kind of the way that I've been positioning it. It's kind of on the scale of like, how manual do you want this to be, right? And how much do you want to do internally versus, kind of outsourcing some of that access. But there's nothing natively that would easily show you, hey, this user's not using this part of this role, right? There's going to be some work to it in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. And then you mentioned a couple things that jogged my memory. Not every user has security roles and actions that actually get them to log into supply chain, for example. So consider, for example, some of your warehouse personnel. If they are doing all of their business process on the warehouse app on a handheld device, they have certain permissions as an employee, they have certain permissions as a warehouse worker, but that's a completely separate interface than logging into supply chain. And they don't actually show up as actually having logged into Dynamics unless they actually go to a web page and log in as themselves there. So you'll have to treat warehouse personnel who just use the handhelds as a different tranche of users, and they have a different security profile, different security footprint, different license footprint, and you might think that they are a fully licensed person, but they can get by with just using the app. Same thing for production personnel who might do all of their work in production floor execution and not actually log in as themselves into the web app. If they're logging into a shared production floor execution terminal, they might not actually show up as logging in as themselves. So time registration users, warehouse workers, a couple other classes of use in the system will show up completely differently in PPAC than somebody who actually logs into the main dashboard of supply chain or finance on a regular basis.
Yeah, we almost made it through a session without mentioning device licenses, but I had to bring it up.
On top of that,
well,
I did some work. Yeah.
Well, and I'm not even talking about device licenses. In my particular case, for our business, we made a decision we're not going to do a device license because the device is usually only used by one person, and one person might need to go to multiple devices. So we just ended up getting team and operations activity user licenses for every user, but they don't show up in PPAC the same way.
Yeah.
So their individual user license covers their use of the device, as opposed to the device license covering the use of the user. So you might look at different things depending upon what decisions you've made with your licensing allocation.
Totally correct. And also, I used the out-of-the-box telemetry with the page views myself, and I was struggling a lot with it, as it just, like mentioned by Alex, it was only about just to display menu items, the page views, but also it does not have any information like what did the user do with that form? Was it purpose for read only, or did they just have maintain access? So at the end, when I reconfigured some security roles, yes, we got some feedback from the users like, hey, I'm missing a posting function, or I don't need write access, it's only for read purposes. And that's indeed some things which was really hard to get out of the telemetry, and then just custom solutions or maybe ISV solutions can help you way better supporting what is the user really using today.
Great point, Andre, as far as the read versus write access on the telemetry stuff. So yeah, there's definitely, it's going to be a manual process at some point. It's just how much of that work do you want to do along the way?
So Jeremy in the chat was asking for some blogs on the telemetry. So Alex, you and Andre might be able to drop a couple of entries for him.
At least Alex wrote about it, and I only just tried it out, and I did not write a blog about the telemetry myself, so that I would refer to Alex blogs. Yeah,
I think that's Alex's middle name, isn't it?
Yeah. Licensing and telemetry, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you guys have questions about that, feel free to reach out. Happy to discuss it. I've been using it fairly extensively, the custom telemetry, and kind of what that all entails. So I think it's one of the areas in the F&O side, regardless of the licensing and security aspect, that is kind of underutilized. If you look at like our BC friends, like they have all sorts of cool dashboards and things like that already pre-built into the app. So we don't get a lot of those out of the box from on the F&O side, but the functionality is all there. So you can absolutely create your own. It's kind of a, let your imagination go wild once we get the data. So.
Great. Another great session. Anything else before we're still about 9 minutes. Is there any other questions or any other thoughts that have popped up in the last few? We've got a little time before we.
Actually, I think if maybe I can, is Ian still on here?
Yeah, I'm there. Yep, I'm here.
Okay, so there was a question here from Tony. Can you clarify how to duplicate a role that so you can take a multi-license role and duplicate it, but only take over the parts that match one license?
Yeah, and so what I shared in the chat, and I can probably share my screen here for emojis for the article that we wrote, that in duplicate, it'll let you go through and let's say I have a license share. So there you go. But if I go through, hang on 1 second. Just wanted to do a little automation thing. There we go. Cool. Let's see. There we go. Cool. So if I look at from duplicating, right, the security configuration, this lets me take a role and duplicate that. Let's say to go from team member, let's say accounts payable clerk, and duplicate that to like a team member license from a finance license. And the question is, hey, we want to go through and take a finance license or a security role that has finance and let's say a project operations attach or a commerce attach, and you want to go through and just get the commerce attach. If you do, I would say duplicate the role twice to go through and then use the excluded. And again, this is inelegant today, but you can use the excluded report to go through and then say which references are excluded across your attach and across your base license. And the part I would say is on the feedback, which would that be helpful from Tony, is you can imagine that in this licensing SKU dialog, while I have put in like, hey, finance, commerce, supply chain management, and the existing licenses there, the attached licenses are again still using the base security role functionality there. But the question is in terms of like which is the licensing cost that attach would be cheap, like the lower price there or the lower like SKU price. Trying to go through and make sure that that would be useful. I'd love feedback. I put my list in the chat because we're working through how might we go through and deliver capabilities around attached licenses to understand duplicating that cleanly across a. We want to go through and have a attached license. You imagine there are 5 attached licenses or 6 attached licenses some customers have. How do we go through and do that in a cleaner way that's not going through and then making it super complicated to understand which attached license is driving that, and the cost profile might be different between a different price on attached commerce, finance commerce, finance attached, supply chain attached, project operation attached, sales attached, as mentioned. So open there, but I would say go through and first start with duplicating the role twice as a process to then go through and then understand the excluded references that are there.
And Alex went ahead and posted the blog entry about the duplication feature. And Ian, should people go away and think that there might be some hiccups with the duplication feature now, but you're still working on it and trying to make further improvements?
What it says, we're making further improvements around that. But one of the things is like we know for like custom security roles, custom security objects, third-party ISV objects that aren't reported in duplicate because it's using the core functionality. We've had many requests from ISVs of saying, hey, you're duplicating my role, but this is being excluded. How would we go through and show that for our solution? And so the backlog there of making sure that excluded license report goes through and captures those ISVs for non-entitled and non-required custom roles is one of the things that's on our backlog to go through and deliver around that. So ISVs are trying to leverage that to go through and say, hey, I duplicate to this role license as well as custom. Realistically, ISVs want to have their ability to say duplicate from my license type to my other license type. And that's not supported today because it's just inbox Microsoft licenses. So we're trying to go through and build the support for ISVs to be able to leverage their custom entities, their custom licensing types as well.
Very good. And for anybody who's not reading the chat, this duplicate feature was GA in version 45. So you'll see it you'll see it when you upgrade if you're a couple versions behind.
And a question to Ian: was it also backported as quality update?
It was backported, correct.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, but it's backported in the blog. It actually has that, or in the article it has it 44, 44, and 45. It's been backported. It's rolling out as part of the product quality update capability to those lower level versions. So by February 8th, it'll be automatically applied, or if you apply the PQU now, you can get that duplicate functionality as well on your version ahead of February 8th.
Okay. Very good.
We have one more question in the Q&A. I'm going to drop it into the chat. Does it take into account non-DFO/SCM licensing, for example, CE and field service? And that could have been in regards to your tool, Andre. I'm going back to see when that question was asked. That was about 21 minutes ago. Yeah, probably right when you were doing your tool demo.
Actually, if it's related to the demo, at least I have good news that the second flow did actually run and completed everything. So I still need to find out what was wrong. But today, the automation tool I created myself is only looking at what is available for F&O licenses, for field service and other customer engagement apps. There's nothing yet. That's also documented on the blog page, like these are currently skipped. But yeah, also Microsoft is going to look after what is the combined story, and also for the license automation, I will also check out what might be feasible to create just one solution for all Dynamics 365 licenses instead of only F&O.
Great. We have 3 minutes. I feel like we hold on for just let it pause for 30 seconds. We're gonna come up with another whole burst of information. It's awesome. There's so much to talk about, and we could probably do this for hours on hours, day by day. So
There will be an hour dedicated to this at DynamicsCon, so I hope we'll see many of you make the journey to Las Vegas.
And I hope at DynamicsCon you guys can all have a beer or a drink, a beverage of choice around to talk about this and enjoy for hours and hours and hours as the drinks flow. So DynamicsCon is a great way to continue that conversation for the long term.
At least 1 hour.
Yeah, Courtney. Yes, I'm sure that the conversation just extends. It's like an organism that just flows out of the room and onto the next room and into the next networking opportunity. It never dies. It's living and breathing 24/7. Great. I appreciate the panel. Appreciate everybody joining us today. We will get this uploaded. It takes a few days just to get it up there, and I'll get a summary of the transcript in the chat as well to companion that, because there's a lot of good stuff that you might have missed, and you can catch up on it that way as well. Thanks again. Everybody have a great rest of your day wherever you are. Enjoy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.